Hello, welcome to the CarCast+Edmunds podcast. I'm Matt, the moderator, DeAndre, here with Alistair Weaver. How are you?
I'm good, thanks. A little tired end of a long week, but yeah, I'm in good form.
You guys are out creating content as you do.
As we do, we did an Edmunds U-Drag shoot this week, so we were away for 3 days at an undisclosed location. Thankfully, this time of year it wasn't. Normally we go up there and it's like 110 degrees and we all fry. This time it was a little bit less than that, so it's
Yeah.
kind of a slightly nicer environment to work in, but
I'd say it's
still lots
like
of.
good, clean, cold air to run your cars. But if you're out there running EVs, I don't know who cares. Like the air doesn't really make that much of a difference. I get it. Like if you're running supercharged turbo cars out there, and it's 120 degrees on the track, it's like, yeah, after a few passes, you might get a little heat soak, but
Well, we can get into it, but we've learned some things this week about the need to warm up EVs. Like you end
yeah.
up having sort of conversations saying, "Yeah, you got to warm them up."
All right.
So we
Um,
should get into that.
okay, first, Bet Online, the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for online betting in 2025. Whether you're a seasoned fan or a first-time bettor, Bet Online is your ultimate game day companion. With the largest selection of odds on everything from NBA and college basketball to the NHL and UFC, Bet Online continues to be your number one sports betting source. From every three-pointer to hat trick, BetOnline has you covered with odds, stats, and more for every game, every play, and every win. BetOnline, the game starts here. Yeah, so this has kind of come up before. It's like sort of the issues with going out to sort of the middle of nowhere and doing your U-Drag videos with EVs. There's no charger on site, and you want to be able to run these cars at 100% or near 100%. So you're getting the most out of it, right? Power doesn't drop off. It doesn't, scale back power or whatever. And you probably need that for some of the more, track oriented modes of these cars. Do you do you, do you bring other EVs to charge EVs? Like how do you
You can do that. So the Lucid in theory can like peer-to-peer charge, but we don't have the cable and we can't seem to be able to buy the cable. We've been trying to buy this cable. We borrowed one once off Lucid, but we've been trying to buy it. We can't buy it. So hypothetically speaking, if you can get the right cable, it's a bit like charging your phone, isn't it? If then you can use kind of an EV as a donor vehicle and
Yeah.
then plug it in. We've looked at different options, like can you get a generator? Well, that's not going to give you enough oomph. The way that the manufacturers do it is basically to bring a massive truck which has either got pre-charged massive batteries or has like Porsche famously did it on the Taycan launch where they just had a truck with like loads of charging ports, but charged by a diesel generator, like a massive diesel generator
Yeah.
that they were hiding from view, but we all found it. So there's different ways of doing it. The reality is we get to a place where we can charge about 15 minutes away from the track. But it is. We talked about this before on the show. If you want to go fast in an EV, you basically got, depending on the model, once you get below about 80-85%, they start to lose performance
Yeah.
significantly. Teslas seem to do a little bit better with that. So you've got to run them. You got to basically run them fully charged or as close to fully charged as possible. So it's like the inverse of a gas car. Gas car, you burn a bit of fuel off, it goes faster.
Yeah.
EV, burn a bit of fuel off, goes slower. And then we had a thing this week. We got into the I'm not going to give all the cars away, but we had a Mustang Mach-E up there, and we just wasn't performing. So I said, why is this not performing? It's driving us nuts. So we rang our contacts at Ford and managed to get some of their senior engineers on the phone. It was fantastic of them to actually jump on the phone for us, and we were talking it through. And it turns out, if you look at the way that it's set up, there's unbridled mode, which is full performance. There's unbridled extended. Now, this sounds like, well, that's what you want, right? You're on a track, you want unbridled extend, you want everything that says reduce the stability control, and it does this and does this, everything which makes it sound like it goes faster. So
Yeah.
what mode are you running? Well, obviously we're running unbridled extend. No, don't do that. Why not? Well, actually, the problem with unbridled extended is that's about extending the range on a track. So it's extending the range, not extending the performance. And in
Okay.
order to make it do enough laps of a track to be representative or to be, to be reasonable, they pull back the performance. Because we were struggling to understand why the 0 to 60 in the quarter mile was slower than what we tested at our track. So it's like, okay, well, we're now running in unbridled mode. And then it was like, oh, well, what about the temperatures? And we had the same problem with our Tesla Model 3, which was up there, that it just wasn't performing. And you've got to warm the batteries up. It's like, who knew, right? So we have
Yeah.
this like 5 minute conversation. I mean, we knew a little bit about this, but it was interesting to hear it from them about some of the nuances of it. So basically, you think about an EV, you got to warm it up in the same way that you warm up, in some ways you warm up a gas car. You run the engine for a few minutes before
Yeah. Yeah.
before you rev it, of course. So, well, okay, so how do you warm an EV, how do you warm an EV battery? Well, there's different ways of doing it. There are certain things where could you precondition it for charging. If you've ever driven a Tesla, you want to go to a supercharger, you basically tell the car you're heading to charge, and then it preconditions the batteries to accept maximum charge. So could we do that? Sort of, but if you're at 100% charge, you can't do that because the car will look at it and go, well, I've already got fully charged, so I can't precondition for charging because I'm already charged, so I'm not doing that.
Yeah.
You're like, okay, so you can't do that. So then it's like, okay, the way to do it is to run the car. Like, well, if we run the car, then we're going to lose charge and it won't go as fast. It's like, yeah.
Yeah. Did they
So
say
I like
how
the
long you have to run the car to get it up to temp?
pretty much to the point where like it's working. So with the Tesla, wasn't using insane mode, and it was literally you just put your foot down and it was going, and then you get to about 30 miles an hour and all hell broke loose. But in track mode, we got it working in track mode, and eventually you just had to run it and get it up to speed. But you could feel the computer just jumping in and saying, "This ain't happening. I'm not happy. The batteries aren't warm enough. You're not having full performance. You can start slow, and then I'll give you some boost when you get to like 30 miles an hour." And it's crazy the complexity of these things. Like people have got no idea. I mean, we live with these things all the time, and every day we do some. The temperature's lower. Where's the ambient? Okay, and also if the temperatures drop, like where did you park it outside? Parked it outside overnight. Parked it outside, right? So if it's gone down to 50 degrees, the ambient won't warm it up very much.
Right.
So unless it's a really hot day, just like physically parking it in the sun
Yeah.
doesn't do that. So you like twisting yourselves up in knots. And in the end, we got it working and, all was well with the world. But it's like all these little nuances. Did you park it outside? Yes. Okay. So it's probably got cold in the night. Right. It's fully charged. Right. So you can't go and charge it because that's a way of getting it warm. No. Right. Just like, whoa. This is like,
Well, I mean, the difference is compared to our gas cars and the years and years that we've been taking them out, we meaning everyone, taking them out and getting them to go fast and all the little tricks and nuances. It's just we don't know them well enough for the EV cars. And when we do, it's right off the showroom floor has these nuances that you have to work around where like you can grab, you know, like the new Corvette and run it and it's fine. But if like cars that we had before were like, oh, we're running it a bunch of times, but now we're getting heat soak. So we want to ice down the supercharger or the intake manifold or something like that. And I go, okay, but now we got to get the oil up to temperature. It can't be too cool, can't be too hot. It's got to be in the sweet spot. And, is the transmission overheating? So you got to like, or cool. So you got to bring the engine up to temp, but you want to ice down the supercharger because there's heat soak in the supercharger. So you know how we are. We're trying to put cardboard on the front of an oil cooler to get a little more heat in it, but put ice bags on top of an engine to bring that temp down, and just like all the little things that we do to try to get a faster pass or a more consistent track time. Uh, but it's a little different with the EVs because, you know, you can't do these little tricks without like calling engineers on the phone and going, what are these? And like even when you run nitrous, you're like, great, you can run the nitrous bottle, but do you want to run the nitrous heater on the bottle first to get it up so you get the right pressure, or for that extra fraction of a second or not?
Well, the other thing as well is that basically these things, because of all the over-the-air updates, they're changing all the time. So what was kind of like sensible practice last week might not be sensible practice this week. It's like you've
Yeah.
constantly got somebody, oh, by the way, we changed the intake, or we've put a different supercharger on. Now everything that you knew has gone away. So yeah, it's difficult and it's complex. It's funny. I like remember my old race engine from racing Caterhams in Europe, and these things weighed what, like less than 1,000 pounds, but they only had 125 horsepower. But that's, part of weight's actually pretty good. But whenever you put a new engine in, it was a 1.6 liter Ford engine. Whenever you put the new engine in, although it kind of like trashed its life, you went like hell for the first few laps because everybody found out that if you basically worked incredibly hard from the off, it basically wore itself in faster and gave you a little bit more performance, even if the longevity of the engine was compromised. So I was like, yeah, all of this stuff. And I don't know how you learn this with EVs because A, the goalposts keep moving as they update them.
Yeah.
And B, unless you're a software engineer with all the coding and everything else, how the hell do you know this stuff?
Well, I guess the manufacturer has to go out and continue to do this type of testing, or like you were saying, at least have a dialogue with groups like Edmunds, what you guys are doing to provide that feedback and say, this is what we're doing. Let's get on the phone. This is what we're running into. Hopefully they're able to log that conversation and then go back and do it. Like, look,
Yeah,
with gas engines, yeah, we keep pushing and pushing to make them more complex and more powerful and more efficient, but also they've been around for 100 years, over 100 years now, where this EV car, although it's been done a long time ago to some extent, but it's been mainstream for only the last, you know, handful of years, whatever, 20. But we don't have that 100 years of experience going, do you ice an intake or do you heat a nitrous bottle or do you change timing a little bit and, do you up the octane and, or, and all the little things we've learned about gas engines over the years. Like you were saying, just you race enough cars with a certain engine, you know how to break in that engine or how to get that little advantage. I think one of Adam Carolla's cars, I think it's the BRE Roadster, the little Datsun Roadster. There's a switch on the dash that says alternator. And we kept wondering, and finally we talked to Pete Brock, and he's like, yeah, we run the car, and when you're down to like the last two laps or so, and you can run the car off the battery. You don't need the alternator. He's like, you flip that switch, it takes the load off the alternator. And like the last two laps, like any little thing you can get, any little advantage you could get, it takes the load off the alternator. You're just running on the battery. Hopefully it doesn't die before the end of the race. Don't flip the switch too early. Don't flip it too late because other people that might have it. And he's like, that's just one of the little things we figured out. And so we got this switch on the dash. The thing for us though is every time we go to the track, it's funny because we never know if that switch is working. And then you don't know if up or down is on or off. So like, do you kill the battery? Does the battery die? You bring the car back in. Was the switch working or not? And we last time we brought it up there, we just had the guys like ended up at the track just rewire everything from scratch. Like something was happening, was burning out a coil. And Adam's like, are we going to use the switch or not? Because I'm like, listen, if you flip that switch, it's not like you're hitting 100 shot of nitrous. It's not like the alternator's going to turn off and you're going to start peeling out at 100 miles an hour, breaking loose. It's not going to do that. You're not even going to notice, maybe. But anyway, so we got some stuff to work out on testing EVs still.
we're still learning every day. And then we also had a big moment with I'm kind of like quite glad I'm here because we had quite a significant moment with the Dodge Charger that we had there, which was a test car, not the one that Edmunds has just bought, but it seemed to be grabbing. I haven't seen the footage yet, but we do about 120 miles an hour into the braking zone went for the brakes, and right on the threshold, or then you kind of like turn the threshold brake, it'll go, tip over into like where the ABS kicks in, but it seemed to be locking up the rears from what people have said outside. Big puff of smoke, the thing just went sideways, and like I had to gather it up, and it was kind of fishtailing, and still managed to get it stopped. And very proud that I made the apex, but it was a bit of a leery moment because you're running two cars side by side.
Yeah. But you were driving the Charger at the time.
I was driving the Charger at this point, and it happened to to Reese, who was driving it in the morning, and then this was kind of like more extreme. So, and it happened with the test track. So we're having some conversations with Dodge about that, and also coming out of the corner. This is like a big challenge because you've got all-wheel drive, but of course you've got two motors. So it is like, if you in gas parlance, the way these things work is like it's like having an engine in the front and engine in the rear, but of course they need to talk to each other.
Yeah.
And in the Charger, I believe they're the same size motor at either end. Normally they're a little bit different, like in the Teslas and stuff. So you kind of got to then use all the fancy torque vectoring and what have you to basically manage all the power. Problem with the Charger coming out of the corner is you never quite knew whether the front was going to push or the rear was going to slide. And there was like one time I just went for the gas and it just got like that massive front end push, what we call technically understeer, and just wanted to kind of drag me off the road. And then another time went a little bit earlier and just got a load of the rear end went, and they were in a slide, and of course you're scribbling off time. And it just felt like sometimes the front end wasn't talking to the rear end.
Yeah.
So that was difficult. The way to get it going fast, and to be fair to it, got some very fast times out of it, is just almost drive it like like a traditional muscle car. Like, drive it like hell, brake like hell, turn it, wait. As soon as the wheels are pointing in the right direction, give it hell again. And if you do that, then, there's enough grunt to deal with it. But the other thing is like, you're doing 120 miles an hour, the thing's locking up. It's 6,000 pounds.
Yeah.
6,000 pounds. We put it on the scales. We had a Ram 1500 tungsten, which I think is the fully loaded one, and that's got all the toys on it. It is basically the same weight with a take like 20 pounds or something. As somebody said, like, you burn a bit of gas, the truck's going to be lighter. And just the feeling of inertia, like that thing starts locking up at 120 miles an hour. That's a lot of inertia. That's a lot of mass moving around you.
Yeah.
And I don't care what you do with the electronics, it's just still the physicality of it. It's a massive car that weighs so much, and it feels like they've still got some distance to run. And I really hope they succeed, and I hope people buy it because they think it looks cool, and there's a lot going for it, but just feels there's work still to be done on that car. And we just published our big test this week of it, and yeah,
I was going to ask about the test because, again, this isn't your car. This is still a press car. So, there's maybe a lot of feedback that can go back to Dodge on this, see what sort of software changes or something can make. And I'm curious to know if the same issues are on your car that you guys are getting, or the one you just took delivery of. First of all, if it's just on the press car, I'm going to call Dodge and go, listen, I'd love to drive it, but don't give me the one that Edmund screwed up.
Oh, that's going back to I think it's on its way back to Detroit, but
I'm sure it is.
Actually, we were talking to Detroit. Reese, who was with me, said, "Do you know whether we had a Charger there, we had a Mustang there, and it's like, look at this classic American, Dodge, Ford, Charger, Mustang." And then Reese was like, "Yeah, where this really is? This is Canada versus Mexico, because the Charger's made in Windsor, and the Mustang's made in Mexico. If the tariff thing comes in with Canada, if you're making a car, if you make US geography, like if you've ever been to Detroit, Windsor is literally just across the river. I mean, you can almost jump there. So the idea that you've suddenly got all these tariffs and it's like you can literally see the factory.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not funny. It's not funny at all.
I mean, they put it there for a reason, and because they wanted the advantages at the time. They wanted it close enough, but over the river, and now it's going the opposite direction. But all right. So the Charger, continuing on that. Well, let's do this. Let's take a quick break, and I got a few more questions about it. Okay, so continuing on the Charger. So you had kind of this hairy moment on the U drags as you were filming with it. But you were able to take it to the test track and the range test.
Yeah.
So let's get into that a little bit. So either one, wherever you want to start.
So well, let's start with the straight line performance because let's face it, that's what it's built for. So let's just go with the stats. So 670 horsepower, which is a lot. 627 pounds-feet of torque, also a lot.
Yeah.
But 5,974 pounds, which is mind-blowing.
Is that like M5 weight?
Yeah, I mean M5's got the same problem. As I said, that's around 1,500 fully loaded weight. That's full-size truck with lots of kit on it weight. It's not like the heaviest. I'm trying to think what a comparison would be. Something like a Ford Lightning, I think is heavier than that.
Yeah, I think
The
my truck's closer to 7,000.
Yeah, Rivian R1T is over 7,000. You get into like the Hummer and the Silverado EV, the
Yeah.
EV trucks. I mean, they're nuts. They're like 10,000 pounds. But 6,000 pounds is still a extraordinary number. Um, so, you offset that with electronics and tons of power. So it is the fastest Dodge Charger. It's the fastest Dodge that we've ever tested. So we did 0 to 60 in 3.5 seconds. I mean, that's slower than something like a Model 3 Performance, but it's obviously still brutally fast. We did 4.1 in a Dodge Charger Hellcat Red Eye. And the last Viper we tested, although it was a manual, was a caveat, that was 3.6 seconds. So fastest Dodge, not just fastest Charger, fastest Dodge we've ever tested. 60, for the quarter mile, 11.6 at 119.
Yeah.
Which is impressive. Also, like massive tires. It's got the widest tires ever fitted to a Charger. So actually, the grip was pretty good. 1.01 G, that beats the Hyundai Ioniq 5N, which is 1G, and Tesla Model 3 Performance 0.97. So we always measure this on a steering pad, so we get a measure of effectively lateral acceleration. And then that's the straight line bit. We also note in all our testing notes about this kind of understeer, this like front end push. It's still still a challenge. You just basically you want to get back on the power, it's just pushing. So it feels like these are all things that they can improve, but it still feels like there's time to go on it. And the noise, this Fratsonic, we talked about this I think a couple of weeks ago, that
Yeah.
worked with a company in Hollywood to come up with a noise, and it's like they're making a big deal about the fact that it's noisy. So we tested it. They were claiming the exhaust in inverted commas would be 126 decibels of noise, which is a lot.
Yeah.
We registered 125.2, so they're nearly there, which is louder than the number that we got for a Challenger Hellcat.
Yeah.
But it's
But it's just a consistent like squeal. It's not because you were saying the Hyundai actually simulates gear changes. So if you were blasting down the road and I was watching from the side, it kind of sounds like you're drag racing it and banging gears along the way, right?
yeah.
But
So
the Charger doesn't have that.
no, so there's two things in the Hyundai's favor. One, they sampled like a 2-liter 4-cylinder engine, so the whole thing feels believable. Like your sensors tell you that this whole thing feels now like a gas car. It sounds like a gas car. You change gear. Not only does it give you the sounds of a gear change, it even gives like the little throttle cut, so you have that little movement in your seat. It's a really cool thing. It sounds like it shouldn't work. It's amazing. This is different. This is basically just a shed load of noise, and they've tried to do a kind of cross between a kind of like V8 with a bit of like, if you cross a V8 with a jet engine, that's kind of where you are.
Yeah.
And it has a big speaker at the rear of the vehicle. It's and it turns up and down depending on drag mode. But I can't get on with it. I think it's the sort of thing that you play once you play once to show off, and then you just turn it off. Because the other thing is like there's just a crescendo. You don't get a gear change, so it's like having a CVT transmission or something. You just get more noise. You don't get like you don't get a
Yeah.
rev change. You don't get any sort of sense of what's going on. And again, like if it's got paddle shifts, maybe they could come up with like a Hyundai style system. You just feel like, unfortunately, the whole car feels like this is the first time we've done an EV and we are slightly feeling our way with it. And rather than, because they were saying, oh, well, Stellantis hasn't really done EVs. Well, yes and no. Like Jeep's just done one, Ram's just done one. But when you look at their brands in Europe, Peugeot, Citroën, Opel, they've actually got a lot of experience of doing EVs. There's
Yeah.
quite a lot of expertise there. So Fiat as well. So it's like, is it the first one that Dodge has done yet? Is it the first one Stellantis has done? Well, not really. So you feel like, I don't know, it just feels a bit unfinished.
It's interesting though that this whole conversation, you naturally just compared it to the Hyundai Ioniq 5N, which I'm sure Hyundai loves that their car is in the conversation. But I think Dodge hates that. I think Dodge wants you to compare it to a muscle car. I think they want the conversation to be, Mustang, Camaro. I mean, not that we have a new Camaro, but they want it in that conversation, right? Isn't that the whole brand for them? And
I
and
guess so, yeah.
put it in that conversation.
I guess so. And also, when you look at like Model 3 performance, it's 30 grand cheaper. And so, I mean, the natural thing is to say, well, who else makes really fast EVs? And Hyundai and Tesla do, and they're the benchmark at the moment. But they're both, certainly in Tesla's case, significantly cheaper and smaller, to be fair. The other one that it lines up with in terms of size and price is BMW's i5. But again, are people going to cross shop an i5, BMW i5 and a Dodge Charger? I mean, in terms of what the vehicle does, particularly when the four-door arrives, yeah, but yeah, so it's like, but that's the problem. Then you're saying actually you're not targeting an EV customer, you're targeting a muscle car customer who now wants a EV but wants like a bit of old school Americana with it.
Yeah.
And that's a bit of a niche within a niche within a niche, isn't it? That's where I start to struggle with it. It's like you're not going to go out to like EV customers, I don't think. Maybe a few, but it's hard to say. So you're really going to say, well, I'm going to sell it to who?
Right. Right. And this is Dodge. This isn't Shelby America making 50 limited edition cars, right?
Yeah,
This is
and
Dodge
they've
going,
got to
we want
sell
to
it. They've got
sell
to.
tens of thousands of these.
Yeah, well, you not only do we want to, you have to.
Yeah, you have to. Um, all right. So, but the range test, how did it perform there? Because Dodge comes in at the Charger, and then the Daytona Scat Pack is, I think, the high horsepower version's estimated to
Yeah,
be, Dodge says 214 miles of range.
yeah. So 216, I think, is the EPA. So we did 255, which exceeded its EPA by 18%, which in many ways is a good result. But 255 miles of range now is like, yeah, I mean,
But that's coming off of a full battery. This is as I was driving my truck, I kept thinking about this, and it's frustrating because we come back and then we do these conversations about cars, and so many of them are EVs just because that's still what's new. That'll probably change over time. But when we talk about EVs, we should be talking about the numbers, the range numbers, the way we sort of talk about gas engine cars, like city and highway, like city, highway, and normal. Like we need to be talking about what's what we consider an 80% number, which let's just call it the normal number, because maybe that normal
yeah,
number is not always going to be 80%, but and then a max number. And I wouldn't call
Yes.
it 100%, 80% because we're probably going to find ways to get more range off of 80% battery and then less off of that last 20%, but that's still going to be the perfect charging realm, you know? So let's just call it like normal and max, and we should start seeing numbers that are like 240 slash 300, right? And
So
going,
yeah,
that's the average, the normal versus the max range.
so our range test at the moment is basically 60% city, 40% highway, and we did, and we're aiming from average speed overall of 40 miles an hour. So what we're effectively saying is this feels like, looking at all the data that we have, this is typical usage for an EV. And then we're measuring not only range, and to be honest, like a range of, what was it, where's my notes, 241 miles. I mean, that's like, for, that's kind of like that just about gets you in the game. But the other thing that we measure alongside it is efficiency. So many measure like how many kilowatt hours per 100 miles, and the Daytona is actually less efficient than the Rolls-Royce Spectre we tested. So that's not great. And of course, this is not using 670 horsepower. This is, driving it on the road in a sensible fashion. So, not great there either, really.
Yeah.
And the argument then is, well, people aren't buying this as like a long range car. This is a second car probably, that you have your I think that even the CEO of Dodge said to me the other week, you have your Durango, which is your like everyday family car, and that's a gas car, and then you have this as your, commuting car during the week. And it's not a bad pitch. It's just that it's a lot of money.
Yeah. And I get it. It could be kind of fun. And, but you're right. Like if you charge this thing like the way we're supposed to roughly 80%, and you commute in it every day, and, you put your foot on the accelerator every once in a while at a stoplight for fun, it's less than 200 miles of range.
Yeah, and people have also got to remember that, yeah, 241, 200, was it 241 mile, or what, I can't remember, what did we say, 255.
255.
Yeah, you're not run it to zero. So you got to think about what the realistic range is.
Yeah.
You're not going to, in the same way the gas car, you're probably pulling for gas if you're like me at a quarter of a tank because you start getting nervous. And, so that your realistic range is then under, is then 200.
Right. And I get it. If you've got the charger at home, you're putting it in your garage, you can top it off each night or every 3 days or whatever. But for a lot of us that have to use public charging or something like an apartment complex, and you have to, share the charger, then you got to wait in line for it.
Yeah. But, it'll be interesting to see how this develops, who buys it, how they evolve the car. I'm sure it's going to get better. And I have to say, I think it looks really cool. I mean, it's got tons of character. It's massive, but it's got tons of character. So it's gonna be an interesting journey, and we'll see how it plays out. But certainly, when you get out of the Dodge, say into the Tesla Model 3 Performance, you realize like Tesla's been doing this a long time now, and they've got some really talented people. And things like the torque vectoring, the way they move the power around, stuff like that, they really know what they're doing. It's I mean, that Model 3 Performance, there's a lot of people quite upset with Elon at the moment, clearly. But as a product, it's an amazing car.
All right. So, and then turning the page a little bit, there was a Kia event and their
Oh
EV
yeah,
event, right?
back in the real world, yeah. The
Yeah. Where was that event?
That was again, everybody has the best jobs. That's in Spain.
Oh,
So we went to Spain and had a look at the EV4, which is a cute little sedan. And then we also had a look at the EV. There's also something called the EV2, which is going to be like an entry level. But I'm not
EV4.
sure that the EV2 will ever make it to America. It's like a little SUV, but the EV4 is coming, probably priced under 40 grand. And Kia, of all the companies out there, they're continuing to push the EV thing, and I think they just think there's an opportunity to kind of own a lot of that market. And it looks a nice little thing.
Yeah.
little sedan, looks a little bit like, looks like the gas cars. Nice, simple interior, elegant. I think he'll do well. I think he'll do well for them. I mean, those guys are on a roll at the moment. It feels like they can do nothing wrong.
Yeah.
And this, I
Yeah.
think, is
Good.
a lot more sensible as an EV, especially if it's going to be like a second car. I mean, let's face it, like, 40 grand is still a lot of money, but it's less than the average price of a new car. Get it on a good, get it on a good lease deal. So I mean, this feels like where the EV market is for me. It's a really nice kind of like everyday car, and then you probably have something else in the garage as the bigger family car for the longer distance stuff, and that's how I think things are going to settle down for a while.
And we can expect them to do like a long range version and a less expensive normal version.
Yeah, yeah, and they'll be in different trims and all the usual good stuff.
And then the tiny one,
The
the
EV2,
EV2, it's kind of
okay,
it's kind of cool looking.
it's kind of cute, isn't it? It reminds it's like the EX30.
Yeah.
The EX30, the little Volvo. I think it's kind of cute. I just
I mean, the front's got
probably
a baby EV9 look to it, right?
yeah.
Um, yeah.
I mean, it's super cute. I just don't know. I guess they might look and see how is the EX30 and things like that getting on, and they will decide to bring it to America. But I think it's too small for the US. We'll see. But it's kind of cute.
Right. Yeah. And we're mostly looking at what you guys have up there. I think you have a video somewhere or something on the social media, but this is the concept art for it. So you can kind of see what their intention was, or how close they got this to the to the concept vehicle that they have, because they didn't really have like a full production vehicle. I think maybe it's more of a concept vehicle that they showed at
Yeah,
the
this
event.
is this is this is a near what we call near production. But
Yeah,
yeah,
but okay. Yeah, you're right. I guess we'll see how something like the little Volvo, how well that does if that starts to catch on. I mean, just because it's a smaller car and there's a smaller battery, we still kind of expect a little bit of range to it. And if it just ends up like a BMW i3 or a Nissan Leaf, I just don't think it's going to catch on as well. If
uh,
it's, or Fiat 500, if it's just like 100 miles of range, and that's for the full battery, like you were saying, like now that's you have to plug it in every day. Like you just drive it and you plug it in. Maybe not the fastest charge, but you just plug it in the wall every night.
I mean, we had an i3 in the family. My wife was driving 100 miles a day with 130 miles of range, and she plugged it in every night in the garage. And it had the little range extender, and basically we never used it because she drove 100 miles every day, which is quite a lot, obviously, but plugged it in every night, and well, there was no issue. So, I mean, going back to the charger, of course, there's going to be a six-cylinder charger this year, and I think that'll sell huge numbers. And I just
Yeah.
think that the EV will be one that they have to pump out at a discount, and they're going to sell an absolute ton of six-cylinder chargers because it's a great looking car, and it's
And
been
they're gonna sell the four door. Like that's
they'll sell
gonna
the four door, they'll sell a 50, 60. It'll be 50, let's say it's 50 grand, they'll sell a ton of 50 grand four-door chargers because it looks really cool.
yeah. I mean, I don't know what they're gonna do on the marketing side with the end of the Fast and Furious franchise, unless they start writing five, six more movies. Then
Are they going to
Chargers.
start that franchise? I hope not. I love that movie. I love those movies. They're always like whenever you got a long flight.
Yeah.
Sometimes I try and watch them at home with like the surround sound and stuff, but actually they're just perfect. They're just a perfect airplane floor to follow, aren't they?
Oh yeah, absolutely. They're fun. They're fun. There's only one left though. So
Is that right? This is the last one?
yeah, this is part two of Fast 10.
Yeah,
So we get that. Yeah, but then
that's
that's it.
that.
Unless something happens.
Well, the Rock's getting on a bit now.
Yeah, I think Vin Diesel's older than he is. So
Oh, really?
yeah, yeah. I don't. It's gonna be. But listen, I mean, if he keeps making money, he keeps making money. What are you gonna
Yeah,
do?
but it has got more silly. I still think the first one was the best one, but yeah, don't
Yeah, I
mind.
think the first one was the best one.
Yeah.
Right, right, and five, I think.
I always think about it like we're on the UJX course, like I'm living my life quarter of a mile out a turn. I was trying to come up with something clever, like I'm living my life a quarter of a mile a break, a turn, another quarter of a mile at a time, but it doesn't quite happen. I can't really pull it off like Vin Diesel.
No. That's why you're not in those movies, probably.
That's why I'm not worth that $200
Um,
million.
all right, let's go ahead and wrap things up. Yeah, good. I'm curious to see what Dodge comes back with on the Charger. What some of the issues that you guys had with it.
Yeah, we're gonna talk it through, and some of this might have been, unique to that vehicle that had just gone a bit haywire. Some of it might be stuff that they keep working on. These things are always a work in progress. We're
And
gonna
like you said before, it sounds like mostly just a software issue. They just need to get more seat time, if you will.
Yeah,
You know.
yeah, and everybody, it's all a learning curve. But I hope it gets there. It's a cool looking thing, and I'm kind of glad it exists. And we got to keep EVs being characterful and fun, and that's certainly that. So,
Right on. All right, guys. Thanks so much for listening. Of course, the Edmunds.com website, check that out. Edmunds.com and Edmunds.com/news is for all the latest and greatest news that these guys are working on. The UDrags videos are up there as check out their YouTube channel. And you can find us on social media as always.
CarCast even followed me this week. I noticed that CarCast followed Weaver on cars. I
Did
was like,
they?
what's happening? Yeah,
That was probably me.
that's probably it. Okay.
I thought we were already following, but we
Maybe
got
you
it.
just deleted me and then refollowed me. I don't know. It was nice. It was nice, improved my percentages.
Right on. All right, guys. Thanks so much for listening. Until next time, keep the air in the spare and the bag in the wheel.